Hey guys, Jenna from Mason here, and I wanted to talk to you today about Google Analytics 4, where we are today. It's a couple months since that July 1st rollout, and I want to talk about some common questions that we're seeing here on our side. So it's here. Now what? What's happening? We worked through a lot of items on this list, like integrating with Shopify. We looked at some data discrepancies. Today, we want to talk about what this means, some troubleshooting, common questions, and how we can help. So let's get into it. One of the biggest questions we're seeing now is users or clients asking us why are sessions down compared to Universal Analytics. And what we're seeing here is that essentially UA and GA4 calculate sessions differently, right? So our advice here is let's not get too hung up on trying to match 100% because it won't happen. But that's okay. So we're saying don't expect a one-to-one matchup. This is really important because the sessions are calculated differently. So sessions in UA start after, like a brand new session will start after 30 minutes of inactivity. So if a user on Universal Analytics was on your site, left to go make some coffee, forgot what was going on, came back 31 minutes later, they count as a new session. So even though they're scrolling, they're looking at your site again in the same day, it's technically a new session because they left for 30 minutes with inactivity. GA4 is a little more flexible. So it looks at user engagement. So it's more focused on, instead of a user coming and going in 30 minutes, what is the user doing while they're here? So technically, you might see lower number of sessions, but the users might be more highly engaged, and we can track those behaviors more closely. So another question we're seeing is, how are we measuring growth year over year, right? So we know that we officially rolled out July 1st. So we have July 1st data. So if we're looking at year over year and we're saying don't worry about one-to-one matchup, we still want to know what was happening from a seasonal perspective. So we want to know what happened last year, especially around holiday time or the events leading up to holiday. So we still are going to look at conversions, and our suggestion and our reports are built from a custom standpoint, right? So we look at these reports we're looking at sessions, we're looking at conversions, and the biggest thing we want to look at is that purchase history, the purchase data. So for e-commerce, sessions might not match one to one, but we are looking at that, the ebbs and flows. So if there's any seasonality, if there's any, months leading up to holiday, if there's any upticks, we want to make sure we're measuring that on a one-to-one basis. And we do that through pulling Universal Analytics, GA4 information, and we put that into a custom report so we can see those similarities and we can know how to prepare accordingly. So another question we see a lot is, why might my conversion rate be up, right? So we talked about this before with the sessions. So sessions are calculated differently. So uh, Universal Analytics used to count one conversion per session, right? So if you're on the site, you're clicking a button to call, and that's a conversion, or you're making a purchase, but you come back and click that call button again, that would still count as just one. However, GA4 counts it multiple times unless you tell it not to. So if a user is coming and clicking that click to call button many times in a row, that would be count as multiple conversions. So you might see the differences there. You can change this. Like I said before, there's a setting in GA4 that you can change how we should count conversions. So we would change it to, let's just call it the same thing as Universal Analytics, once per session. So if a user is on the site, makes a conversion, that's counting as one and not 15, just because they kept hitting that button over and over again. Another big question, why is point of sale included in my GA4 and how do I exclude it? So some users, some clients of ours, or, the industry might have a physical location, or they might do a pop-up store, and they're seeing, some unattributed revenue coming into GA4. that likely might be the sales from your point of sales software. So if we're saying that we know that these things are, included from a physical standpoint, these are users that are in these are purchases that are happening in person. We want to make sure that we're excluding it. So you can do a couple of things. You can exclude it, so we can filter it completely out of reports, or you can take out the point of sale as a source, and we would have to just scrub through all of the reports. It's really just a matter of what's important to see. If you want the whole picture of your business from physical to online, then we might want to keep it in and just make a separate report. Or if you want to keep that completely separate, physical stores should not be in GA4, and that's how you have your business model, then we would say, okay, let's figure out a way to remove it entirely, so you're not seeing any of that data in your GA4 reports. It's really just a matter of preference, but it is important to check because you might be seeing some inflated revenue and unattributed sources, because that wouldn't come in as an online source. That would just be unassigned. So it could make some of your other numbers a little bit more confusing. And then the last question here is, what's the most important metric to focus on? There's a lot of different things happening in GA4. What do we want to look at? If we had to look at just one thing, which we never would, but if the most important thing, we had to drill that down, I would say user engagement. So GA4 has really important insights for behaviors and user behavior patterns, identifying what users are spending their time on and what do they usually do next. So we can there's really thoughtful insights as to what the majority of the traffic is doing once they engage with your content. So this is incredibly helpful for holiday season. We can understand even at a more granular view this time around with GA4, where users are sticking around. What do they usually do after they engage with your content? Do they look at a blog post and then leave? Do they look at a blog post and then click on an image? Do they look at a piece of content in your collection pages and then make a purchase right from there? All of those things are really helpful to craft that narrative and to be able to say, okay, I know what these users are typically doing. Let's do more of it for holiday, or let's do less of the things that aren't getting engagement. So it's really important to look at that user engagement piece to tell that whole story of how we can best serve content and information to the people who are going to convert the best. A couple of things here, understanding how users interact with your site. So we talked about engaged sessions, right? So those users that are sticking around, what are they doing? They're scrolling, they're clicking, they're watching videos. Let's take a deeper look at what is happening on that front to be able to replicate that for holiday. Acquisition metrics are important as well. So we want to know, of those engaged users, where are they coming from the most, to be able to make informed decisions on advertising or, social campaigns or organic reach, etc. And then, of course, we want to, really focus on those e-commerce metrics. So, average order value, revenue, of course, the rate at which engaged users are purchasing. So we want to see what, obviously what products are the most important in that season. So that's where we talk about that year-over-year data. We have historical data to be able to leverage to make informed decisions for this year coming around. We can help you out. This is a lot. It's still evolving. There's a lot of information and really great data that you can use in GA4. So reach out to us. We're happy to help. And you've got this. See ya.